right now we design for two sets of people. One would be the Gen X and the urban millennials. Okay, so we would like to I would like to talk about the urban millennials first. I can hear
Correct.
someone.
Yeah,
Can
there's
I
some.
some Okay. So I would like to talk about the urban millennials who are in a very very interesting phase right now. It's extremely important that we address that. See, we as a urban millennial, we travel a lot, and that combined with technology, has brought in a true global awareness in terms of trends and standards across the world. But what we need to understand is that this technology actually connects us to a ocean of humanity. I mean, you are liking and comparing things with a person whom you didn't even know existed before that. Now, this trend is also making us question who we are. There's a necessity to define one's own identity to come up with the answer of who am I and why do we need to do that. There's a reason. See, when we design a home, okay, we are talking of strictly home design here. When we design a home, it surely needs to echo with what one stands for, what one believes in. It's a space that's like an extension of your personality. And when one has to find that out, that sends millennials on a path of self definition, you could say. Now, what does this search bring forth? This search actually brings forth a need for us to have a cultural connect in our spaces. Now, this is the new trend that we are talking about with millennials. See, as they say, luxury was truly invented in India. We have no dearth of style and opulence in our repository. I mean, so the style that's being adopted by the millennials would be that of a simplified and adapted Indianness. Okay, so traditional art and crafts, they're making their way back into our contemporary structure, but with modern technology and materials. So repackaging local with an appeal that's global, I think probably that's what describes affordable luxury for the millennials right now. So, and if you're talking of Gen X is, their need to be global is more important than this. So they are in a very secure space. So whenever we do a trend or a design for a Gen X, it's more to do with global trends. But for millennials, it's an adapted Indian. So that's where our luxury definition comes from for these two generations.
So completely agree. And I would not only talk about the millennials, I mean, I would talk about the millennial mindset because, the universe of people having that mindset today is much larger than the millennial themselves. And they are very, very dynamic. They are constantly changing. So for a business owner like me, I need to be really, really on my toes to keep seeing what changes are happening and how do we adapt. But we do try and understand what are those key values and ingredients which really resonate with this crowd. And the three things that I would like to point out that we focus on are basically, these guys are very, very socially responsible. They admire brands which follow values like sustainability, are socially responsible, care for the planet. So we really try and incorporate these values in whatever offerings we create. That is one. Number two, this entire lot is a great balance in their psychographics between practical functionality as well as the aesthetic quotient of the products and services being offered to them. So you need to maintain both. It has to be great in terms of form, function, aesthetics, and top of the line design which is not more than what is required, neither is it less than what exactly is needed. Um, and the third thing that is there is that these guys really appreciate businesses that simplify life around them. The lifestyles have been changing, and hence they really are admirers of solution providers. So if you look at all the aggregator apps like Ola, Uber, and Urban Company, etc., around us, look at the phenomenal growth that these guys have been able to achieve in no time. So we pick up these three things essentially, and try and sew them across whatever we offer. So I think these are three core fundamentals that every business needs to keep in mind when it comes to serving the millennial mindset.
I think I agree with both of them when they say that it is important to have a cause behind the brand. Millennials respond to that and they want to know about that. In the marketing, it's important to establish that information very clearly with millennial targeting. What is it that you stand for apart from your products? Is there something that you stand for in the brand which is well beyond your products? And I think millennials are interested in that. They're interested in topics which are global, like black and white racial topics, or you have the Hong Kong and China topics, different things today. They're really into that, and they feel very passionately about all of those things. And environment sustainability is definitely a big thing, but other than that, outdoors and living a healthy lifestyle is very important to them. I feel it's a constant with all millennials. I feel that brands like I feel that millennials these days go for low sugar seltzers. They want to go to a North Face to get the best outdoor camping equipment and jackets, and they want to go to a coach and get. They are into quality on the one hand, but on the other hand, the outdoors and healthy living is something that is, I think, important for them.
Yeah, so the pandemic has actually blurred a lot of lines. Okay,
Yes.
so all the definitions that were strictly there before the pandemic, now all of them have just blurred lines around them. So, as you said, flexibility and adaptability is the one of the key factors that we need to be working around. So, when you're talking of co-living happens on various levels. One co-living is, of course, all the family members doing their own thing stuck in one home. That's also co-living of one sort. The other co-living is when you have the young generation who are away from, say, a permanent home. They're working and they're in a city for work, and they want to live together. And because that's the only family they have, social interaction. There's much more of an opportunity for you to interact socially in these co-living spaces that are there. So, in both these cases, you have say certain fixed personal zones in the house, and then there are these common interaction zones. So at any given point of time, you have a choice of whether you want to meet people. If you want to meet people, you don't have to make too much of an effort. You step out into that common zone, and if you want your own space, then you come back into your cocoon that you've created. Now, earlier when we used to talk of just co-living as different people living in one building, it again had better definitions of having your own room. Now, with entire families stuck inside one house, one has to go about redesigning their homes. Okay, now this turns into a thing that, for instance, earlier our living rooms used to be the biggest areas in our room. Now we are not inviting that many people. So what happens is a family room plus a dining plus an open kitchen forms your entertainment zone, and your previously the drawing room that you had could have like a sliding folding partition, and that turns into an office zone, come an entertainment zone. So it's very flexible. So I think co-living has acquired a whole new meaning over the pandemic with you co-inhabiting a space with your own family members as well. So there's need for privacy in home, and then there's need for social connection in the other traditional co-living spaces. So I think that's the lines we're talking.
Well, I mean, this pandemic, I think one silver lining has been that all of us have been kind of locked into our home spaces for almost like 6-7 months.
Yeah.
Uh, and we've been able to discover our home spaces much better than ever. We used to just have a day outside and then reach home, perhaps maybe home in the weekend, but then we've been just inside our home spaces for the last 6-7 months. I've been able to discover each and every nook and corner of the house. And though it started like almost like an adversity, but then it also led to discoveries. So home today, home space is no longer a place where you kind of spend good quality time with your family members only, but it's become your most comfortable and productive office space. It's become your gymnasium. It's become your fine dine restaurant. It's become the theater for you to binge movies, consume OTT, follow your passions, hobbies, experimental cooking, and whatnot. So with that, people have also realized, and people discovered what can be done to And these changes are not only going to last till the pandemic lasts. I'm sure this is going to extend way beyond it and going to kind of become a new normal. Also, if you were to look at personas today, unlike some of the yesteryears where people used to be known for what they were qualified as or what their occupation was, today people are more than just one occupation. And he may be a banker, he may be also a DJ, he may also be a cricketer, he may also be a great experimental chef. So multiple dimensions to personalities. People have discovered how to carry on all of this within the home space now. The need is, and they feel like a home should be like a lookbook or a mood board to reflect their persona. From a furniture perspective, and I'm sorry I keep going back to furniture because that's the business I am in. Um, we've always been connoisseurs of these activities happening. We've always believed that lifestyles are changing, lifestyles are multidimensional, and even well before the pandemic started, we thought of these some key activities that people have started doing in their home space. From home is nothing new. It's just gained traction, intensity with the pandemic coming in. But we started thinking about this and started designing almost something we call an ecosystem, which is like more than one furniture piece coming together to offer you the greatest experience when you work from home, or when you're Netflixing for 6-7 hours together, or when you're wanting your me time, or when you're trying to meditate or do your exercise. So the need is to have fluid solutions which can move across any part of the house. So it's not only something which is designed for the living room. That thing can move into your bedroom, multifaceted furniture pieces, furnishings, which can aid you in doing all these activities with the greatest level of experience. And I think that's the direction probably design needs to take, not only in terms of furniture as a category, but overall. And I would also go to the extent of saying that the future of how homes will be designed, perhaps these things will be definitely kept in mind, so that you have perfect spaces, neat little corners to carry on these activities. It'll no longer be the living room space and the bedroom space and the kitchen space. It's going to go well beyond that, and that's what the pandemic will probably leave behind once it goes.
Even my own experience has been in the last 6-7 months I've been at home, and when I walk around the house I find so many things missing. There are bookends, and there are dustbins, and there are laundry bags, and I don't know, all kinds of things that are not there at home and should have been there. So I have a millennial at home. In fact, my daughter is exactly born around 1999 December. So she's a millennial, and if I look at her, she would really like a space which has a place to exercise, which has a place to sit and work with her laptop. Millennials somehow want to use all of this in one space. So her exercise space, her sitting on the bed and working on the laptop, and her she rarely uses the table. And I feel that they work in very different ways from us, and we have to recognize that they work in a very, very, very different way. They don't look for formality anymore. They don't look for formal structures. They adapt much more easily than we did. And we require a table and a chair to sit down and converse. They don't. They actually can have pretty good conversations wherever they are. So I feel that this adaptability needs to be taken into consideration. If you're designing a bed, design it such that maybe and put your laptop, you can put a glass of water, a jug, keep a space where you can have a yoga mat, you can have an exercise area, keep some area which has a small little garden or some plants or something like that. And of course, say no to plastic. I think millennials are very passionate about plastic.
Yes.
All the millennials I met have consistently told me that, and she keeps giving me lectures on how I should remove all plastic from my home. So I think
No,
that
but
they're a
that's
very,
so true.
yeah, they're a
They are
very
much more sensitive to what is happening, and
Yeah.
they kind of respond to it very differently.
Yes, they respond to
I
it
agree.
differently, and they adapt much faster to their surroundings.
Yes,
So
yes,
I think
absolutely.
that adaptability should be seen in whatever we create for them as well.
Automation is now more into our parts, into our everyday life than it was ever before. So, and millennials, they get super excited by it as well. So you know, there's a whole lot of I mean we do a lot of home automation also. So whenever we are doing villas and stuff, there is a lot of scope for home automation. I mean, especially now, the pandemic, when you come home, you need that warm water to take a bath immediately. So you need all the everything set when you enter the house. So you don't have to wait. So yes, automation is a big part of it. See, there's a lot of change happening around us all the time, and this is, I mean, we are living in such fluid times that it's crazy. And but I think the millennials are doing a great job of adapting themselves. Right? No word of cribbing. It's the adaptability is beautiful, and I think that's something that we need to pick up as designers as well. I mean, because as designers, I would say we apply design thinking, and the main feature of design thinking is having an ill defined problem. Okay, so let us all be ready to accept that ill defined problem and to find solutions which also keep changing with our problem. So that's something that we need to learn from the generation of today and adapt it in our scheme of things. I think that's
Brilliant.
automation is one of them. Yeah.
We've kind of bucketed customers or profiles into two, really. I mean, one set of people who are heavily mortgaged, and the other set of people who are not really into loans and EMIs, etc. So the problem of prioritizing or delaying the buys or spending is mainly with the mortgage set of people. There also, with where script is positioned, and the kind of customers that we have, there's not been a big impact on their mindsets on spending. They are spending. Okay, we've in fact been very happy to see the kind of footfalls from the day our stores opened up. Um, and I'm talking about physical stores. Online furniture is a tough challenge to sell still, because it's a category which needs that touch feel to happen before you make the buying decision. The guys who are without mortgages are anyways fine, and we've had large ticket buys, etc., happening, especially after July, seeing that traction. Um, I would say what is more pertinent to us, at least, is the fact that more than the financial implications or the spending patterns, I would again like to reiterate, it's the clarity of thought which has come in people on what exactly they want to buy, because of the time they've spent in their households and because they've been able to understand their own spaces, their own needs better. So I would not worry a lot about the fact that so on a business, the issue is the footfalls that we have. We are having around maybe 70% of the footfalls we would normally have in a normal course of
Oh,
time.
wow.
But as far as our ticket sizes are concerned, and as far as the offtakes are concerned, we are pretty happy about it. Um, yes, there is a huge segment which is prioritizing their buys, who are delaying their purchases, or who are just buying the smaller furniture pieces, which are the bare minimums that they need to fill up right now to make up for their, work desk or a small chair or an office chair, so on and so forth. But largely, I think for us in this affordable premium segment that uh, we are really not experiencing a lot of not buying and delayed buying syndrome at all. It's more of the mental block still of going out in crowded places, going out to physical stores and buying. But they're all very accessible through technology. Some of them have shifted to buying online. Uh, if we are able to satisfy them with great product demos and store walkthroughs, etc., uh, I think the market is going to bounce back, and buying is going to bounce back quicker than we all think. I mean, I really expect things to be very normal by Jan.
Yeah, so I think that home and home decor and home is an important area. So people are actually coming back to home stores. It's not been as impacted as, say, fashion stores. But having said that, definitely I feel that footfalls have come down, and in fact, our online has gone up. So we are selling more online now than we were selling previously. And I also feel that the impulse buyers are far fewer. because the crowds have thinned out or whatever. But people are not buying on impulse. It's the serious buyers who are coming. They are looking for something specific. They come and ask for it, and you give it to them. And I feel personalized selling is becoming important, that you have to set up an appointment, spend time with them, talk to them, and give them the service one on one in today's environment. And also, when you talk of sustainability or you talk about a social cause, I feel people are responding to that much better than they did 6 to 7 months back. Today, if you say that you're also feeding artisans, you're also doing your products that have an impact on rural lives, people are listening. I feel that there is a little bit of shift in their
Yes.
thinking.
As an architect we do design and build solutions for residences as well. Now, actually, I can say this, there is one major trend shift in the residential design segment as a result of the recent pandemic lockdown. See, as Rajat rightfully said, see, the pandemic has obviously increased, many people working from home, but this is a trend that's going to outlive the pandemic for sure. So many people are planning to, continue with this model. So the house has suddenly gained a whole lot of importance. The sudden onslaught, of the lockdown has also seen people arranging and rearranging their spaces literally haphazardly to define new working zones inside their houses. And now, say 6 to 8 months down the line since when they did this, it's turned into a complete disarray of sorts for most people. Okay. Now, what this has done is that it's made people realize the importance of taking professional help to sort their spaces. Okay, now the actual challenge that now lay in front of them was to get these spaces redesigned while they continued living there. Okay, it's a huge challenge. Now, this has made a new typology of what I would call as operational space redesign inside homes emerge. So you don't design the entire house; you design spaces that you operate out of. Okay, so it could be a single room where you operate out of, or a combination of spaces catering to a particular task. So which is now your new scope of work. The ticket size has become smaller for sure, but the numbers for us have increased actually quite a bit. Now, it certainly for sure. And this segmented redesign, as we call it, actually helps the user in more ways than one. Firstly, most of them, they work. Most of the work which is happening it's now happening off site. You're not getting your carpenters inside the house now. Due to the pandemic, we are all fearful of having too many people inside our homes, so it's even more advisable to take all your production and everything off site. So when your ticket size is smaller, it's easier to get that thing done. Then elements are prefabricated in workshop and they are assembled at site in just a matter of a day, couple of days, maximum 2 days or 3 days. So this minimizes the disturbance at home. So you're living there and you're getting work done. So it's easier to do that. Secondly, and more importantly, it gives much better financial control over the process to the client. See, the monetary commitment to the process is better defined in this manner when it gives them more confidence to spend more per area. Okay, this is something that's a trend that we notice, and I would like to talk about it. Before the pandemic hit, whatever they were willing to spend on one room, we have seen a direct increment of 30 to 40% more.
Wow.
For instance, if a residence in totality was to be done in, say, for instance, just a figure, 25 lakhs, okay, when you break it up in segments, it will cost you more. It will take the cost up to say 30-40% more, but people are willing to do it because what it does, it doesn't take the entire full commitment from you of those 25, 30 lakhs. Okay, it's been broken down into segments. So this makes the client, it gives them more satisfaction of being in control rather than having that fearful feeling of, being over budget. So this is a segment that's coming to us in crazy numbers now. People coming to us when they say, we want the house done, but could you please do 2 rooms first, 3 rooms first, 1 room first, and then you package it slowly like that. So, and people are spending much more on this as compared to the previous one. So I think, yes, this new trend is certainly a welcome.
Actually think this generation puts both in a very balanced way. I don't think they put design over purpose or purpose over design. both ways. I think it's and I mentioned that. I mean, it's pretty well a very balanced approach. So it's both design and functionality. In fact, designed to the extent of being really in a equilibrium kind of a situation where it's nothing really much more than what is required and nothing. That's what I've got as a feedback. That's what has been my observation with the people that I've been seeing in not only in our stores but overall across product categories.
What do
To
you
me,
feel?
design is purpose. So I can't distinguish between the two really. But but if he's asking that is it beauty over functionality or beauty over purpose, I think purpose plays a very key role right now.
I would say purpose helps you identify with the space for a long duration of time, and design or aesthetic beauty, if that is what we refer to as design here, it gives you the first beautiful impression and the satisfaction of getting a space done. So both of them are equally important. So when millennials come to us, they are, as I said, this generation is very well aware of things. They don't go with hearsay. So they're very well aware. So when they come to us, they know that if they're hiring a professional, they need their say storage is sorted, or very well interesting solutions in terms of space usage need to be there. But at the same time, all of it needs to be very coherent looking, and they would have some style in their hand, and it all needs to kind of come together to form a very nice solution. So yes, purpose and aesthetics, I think there has to be a very good balance for us to also justify our presence in the project.
I think health and hygiene is going to be to the fore. So when we talk about, say, uh, upholstery, for example, I mean, if there are fabrics which are antimicrobial or something like that, surfaces which are easy to sanitize, keep clean. I think that would definitely gain priority. It's going to be more tilted towards this health and hygiene. It's going to stay for a while, and it's for the good. People have realized. I mean, um, one thing that we also should, if you look back at the last 7 8 months, we've all been using sanitizers, masks, all kind of precautions have been observed. So if you kind of try and recall people who've got normal viral infection, fevers, flus, have really gone down. It's either COVID or nothing. So that's because we are all so conscious now. We are really so neat and clean. So I think if there are surfaces which or materials which can help in aiding, synergize, or take care of health and hygiene, probably yes. As of now, I'm not really aware of anything like this or a big breakthrough which has come about, but maybe people are working on it.
Comfort, natural, informal, and healthy is are going to be the what millennials seek in their textures in their environment. They are an informal bunch, and they like informality in their clothes and their bags and whatever they wear or where they sit around. And comfort is very important to them. I think that the feel of the fabric, and that it should be breathable, that it should not have any plastic component. All of that becomes kind of very important.
Another interesting thing that we've realized is that, see, people nowadays they don't want to follow trends blindly. Okay, so they are very intelligent. They want to make an informed choice. So people are moving away. See, sanitation, as you said, was obviously it's a foremost concern for all of us. So hard surfaces come into play more than soft surfaces. Anything that's easy to clean, easy to maintain. So false ceilings are becoming a little minimal with people. They don't want coves where you can't go and clean. They don't want dust to be settling down on nooks and crevices. Upholstered surfaces again are going a little down. So a lot of people do realize that a lot of our traditional homes, the kind of finishes that we had and the kind of furniture that we had, maybe we could bring back those elements because they were so well suited for our climate and for our conditions. So we are seeing a huge revival in traditional designs coming back. to the current. So it's as I said in the first thing that you asked me, there's a cultural connect also.
Yes.
There's this ease of cleaning and maintaining these homes. They are very easy to maintain actually. So you go with any contemporary stuff. At times, you have to think whether it's going to accumulate dust or something. But you use stone, you use wood. It's so easy to work with. So yes, that is the trend that we are seeing, that people say, okay, and traditional Indian homes had interiors where the furniture played a very less role. I mean, the furniture was sparse. So, and all of them, whatever you had was lifted off the floor. So it's easy to clean the floor. So even the furnitures that we do, people demand that, okay, don't give us bulky, huge stuff. Give us something that's kind of light and easy. We can like clean under it, or even the Roomba can go and clean under those furniture. It's very easy. So that's another trend people are picking on. So yes, light and easy to clean and easy to maintain, and something that brings back memories. Probably that's a new trend that we are looking.
I think materials like copper will play a role. It's antimicrobial and it's
Yes.
somehow very much in vogue right now. So
True. I agree.
Silver is also extremely antimicrobial, but the worst one is actually stainless steel, something that we so blindly used to put everywhere, and we used to think it's easy to clean. Stainless steel germs last up to 72 hours on stainless steel.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah, while copper, silver, all these things are self-cleaning, but you can't use copper and silver around your house everywhere. So now, of course, as you have these antimicrobial toppings and coatings and which come up, and you need to kind of work with that around. But whatever we do, we need to be aware of the materials that we are using, and that's it. That's all.
They will get into the habit and they will get used to using the vocal and the local, because that comes with a very different cultural, and it's a very different look and feel. And then you feel very connected. The idea is the connect value also. When you're doing something, like Shubhani very rightly said, it's always with a purpose. So you immediately get that connect. And I think that trend is to stay.
I feel
Yes,
that the impact of this current time is here to stay for a long time. It is not going away. And if you look at 1 year as say the period that it lasts and we live with it, then I think it is something that is bound to create some sort of change which is not immediate or too fad driven or trend driven. I think it's bound to create a deeper impact. So I'm really hoping that the vocal for local works, because really speaking, in today's time, you are not able to travel as much. You are not able to get the imported goods as easily as you used to get them. You used to just hop off to Singapore and buy clothes. I mean, it doesn't work that way anymore. So this is going to stay with us. And I think if brands here recognize that there's an opportunity and, build that, it will be something that will have a lasting impact.
Okay, so I would like to add to Supreet, you said even if there are imperfections, people are buying local. Okay, that is where I would like to stop you. See, we need not accept mediocrity just because it's local. There are a lot of people doing excellent work around us, people who are making local stuff. Okay, Indianized furniture, Indian adapted furniture, who are brilliant in their work, and those are the people we need to reach out to. Being vocal for local means search for the best around you and not just accept anything that comes your way. Okay, there are imperfections. If there are any that you would like to adopt, would be probably the artwork that our artisans make. Okay, I would definitely prefer, say, a statue which is handmade, an idol which is handmade, over a 3D printed perfect one. Okay, so now we need to know where to accept the imperfections and where not to. And just because some people are imperfect doesn't mean the good ones don't exist. We realized during the pandemic, and we were actually pretty vocal for local even before the term was coined, that we need to have local partners. We can't be looking at importing stuff and all that. And we realized there are some people who are doing brilliant work around us. Okay, and we were so happy to discover these places. And I think that's been one of our biggest takeaway from this, that we realize so much is happening around us which we never even bother to look at or consider. I think this should be everybody's mantra now. So
When we say imperfection, when you create things that are handmade, for example, or which are made by artisans, it's not called imperfection. It's actually called the touch of the hand. Because when you create with hand, every piece has to be a little different.
Absolutely.
In Japan, there's the concept of wabi sabi, where
Yeah.
the products are misaligned purposefully, and I think there's a beauty in that, and that recognition should be there, which is different from poor products or imperfect products.
Add my support to this vocal for local. I mean, albeit on the back of a pandemic, I mean, it's such a great chance for all of us to help the local industry and the economy at large to develop, And there is so much of skill and talent, whether we talk about artisans or design, which is available in this country. They don't get the right platforms. They don't get to see the light of the day. They are just great in their skills and mindsets. I think, I hope that this is there to stay for a long time and forever, and I think we should just stop blindly going and to import things. There is enough and more which we can, develop and source from within India. Everything is possible.
Yes.
And also, what the talents and skills or skill sets that we don't have, once this movement starts, they'll also start developing. So once a small beginning can lead to a development of a huge ecosystem, and this entire drive of Make in India can really, it can really catapult everything, change the way we are on the world map.
And as people from the construction industry, we need to be even more, responsible for this, because
Absolutely.
if you don't, give enough credit to these skilled artisans, what do? They leave their job and they become unskilled construction workers. Now, what you've done, you've taken a guy who's so brilliant at his work and you put him into something where he's actually bringing down the standard of work there. Okay, so it's a lost situation at either end. So let's support local, be vocal for local at the right places. Let's not bringing the wrong people at the wrong junctions. Let's choose excellence over mediocrity in any space that you do in vocal, and being vocal for local at the same time.
All our responsibility to get that vocal for local out there. Each one of us plays a great role in that.